Hey folks, this is Paul. I'm going to be talking about power in A Course in Miracles. There's a big theme in the Course to do with taking back your power, salvation and freedom from suffering and sickness and death, um, the ownership of the power of your decision, whereby you can choose, you literally can choose by your free will whether or not you will suffer. And this is all throughout the Course, and it's really leading you to the ownership of who and what you are, and that when you're really centered in the responsibility for being true to yourself, your mind has the power to choose exactly what will happen and to not choose what you don't want to happen. So let's start off with this part. This is from "Myself is ruler of the universe." Jesus is saying that you have such power, you're in such a position of decision, which the decisions you make have power and they can cause things to happen, that you essentially are the ruler of the universe, whereby you can say, I choose that this occur and it happens, and I do not choose that this occur and it doesn't happen, and nothing else can happen, and there are no other powers with power over you to act against your will, because your will is whole and it has an undivided will, has no opposition. So myself is ruler of the universe. This is A Course in Miracles. This is what we're leading up to, trying to become empowered, taking back your power. It is impossible that anything should come to me unbidden by myself. Even in this world, it is I who rule my destiny. What happens is what I desire. What does not occur is what I do not want to happen. This must I accept, for thus am I led past this world to my creations, children of my will, in heaven, where my holy self abides with them and him who has created me. It's impossible that anything can come to me unbidden by myself. I rule my destiny. What happens is what I desire. What does not occur is what I do not want to happen. Nowhere in there is there any victimhood. There's no being at the effect of the world. There's no being overpowered by external forces. There's no suffering against your will. There's nothing happening that you haven't chosen. Every single thing you feel, every reaction, every response, every experience, every thought is a choice that you make inside that comes out. This is a course in cause and not effect. You are causal. You're a co-creator with God. Your decision has power in it. The mind has the power to create worlds. We've dreamed of a planet and a universe. Your mind has immense power, but the power is somewhat conflicted in its use when you are unclear about the fact that you have this power. If you disown it and you give it away and you displace it and you give it to other people and you make things have power over you, it weakens your power, and you now have a divided will where you're in some ways trying to express in a certain way, and in other ways you're trying to express against that. It kind of cancels out the power, and you disempower yourself, and it makes no results because you're kind of trying to do two things at once in a split-minded state. So what Jesus is trying to get you to do is to reintegrate all of your power and all of your choosing and all of the clarity of exactly who does what to who, and realize that Nothing happens unless you say so. Nothing can occur. If you think about it, like, before you even get into there being a world, nothing can happen unless somebody's mind decides to make something happen. You have to have a cause in order to have an effect. Mind is the only power. Mind is the only place where there is will. Willpower is not just some kind of drive, it's actually a force that can create. Jesus says here, thus am I led past this world to my creations, children of my will. That you have literally created living beings in heaven. These are your creations through an act of sheer willpower, that you just simply will them and they show up. This is the power that your mind has. It's immensely powerful. So nothing can occur unless somebody's mind somewhere decides, I will that this happen, and in the willing of it, it's like a choice, and you're saying, I cause this to occur, and then there are effects or results, consequences that come from that choice. And so it's very deliberate, very intentional, very purposeful. So nothing at all can occur unless somebody is choosing it, somebody's making it happen, including making the world turn, making the stars shine a light and have nuclear reactions, making the galaxies form. Someone's mind has to put this in place. It's impossible for anything to occur. You're ruler of the universe. It is impossible that anything should come to me unbidden by myself. Infinite scope. The stars do not show up unless somebody dreams of them. The planet does not turn on its axis unless somebody's mind is turning it with the power of the mind. Bodies do not become sick unless somebody's mind is making the bodies forcibly be sick. Nothing dies unless someone's mind is saying, I choose to destroy this. There has to be a cause and there has to be an effect. These things don't just sort of, the world seems like it's set up to just be on autopilot, like there's just a bunch of physics laws and rules, chains of events and reactions and interreactions and reactions against reactions, making it seem like it's all just kind of doing its own thing and happening on its own and by its own rules, and it's just physics. And this thing happens because this thing happens, as if the world causes itself. As if things within the same level are causes and effects, and this piece over here does something to this piece over here, and then something happens, as if that's real causality. It's an illusion of cause and effect and power. The world doesn't have any power, because all of it is being manipulated and animated and chosen and maneuvered and made to do things by mind, consciousness, if you will. Not a single thing can occur anywhere in existence, reality or illusions, without the power of the mind to decide to make it happen. And the will that you share with God, the power of God's will, is the only way that you can cause things. And this is the only cause. There is no other cause of any kind. Even the things that seem to be other causes are themselves effects which are being caused by minds. Whether it's like the body seems to have an immune system and the body seems to be healing itself, it is not healing itself. The mind is using the body and forcing the body to do stuff and change in certain ways, so it looks as though the body's causing the healing. The body isn't causing any healing. The mind is directing it. As the Course says, the mind makes this decision as it makes all decisions responsible for the condition of the body. And medicines that you take, you think you put this stuff in your body, you have a vaccine, you have a pill, whatever, and you think it does stuff to the body. But it doesn't. As the Course says, you think that you have these external things that you think are ministering to you and causing you to have changes, but it's always your mind that is actually working through these things, using them kind of like props, that they just symbolize what your mind is forcing to happen. So if you got to think about everything that can possibly happen has to be intentionally, deliberately caused by a free-willed, minded being. And anything that can occur can only come from a mind that has this power. It is the only power that really exists. It is the only causation. All the things that you think are happening in the world are results of, effects of, consequences from someone's mind causing them to occur. Over here I have a fish tank with little fishies swimming about, and I might think, well, I'm not making the fish move. They're swimming on their own. They have their own sort of built-in programming that's built into their bodies that determines their functionality and how they interact and how they move and what they do, as if we're saying that this effect, this thing that mind has created or made, dreamed of, has a life of its own. So now what happens is the mind causes stuff, and then it's a whole different matter of disowning that fact, becoming blocked to the awareness that you had the power to do this, dissociating from it, disowning it, making it seem like it's got nothing to do with you, and then believing that the thing that you put there has a mind and a will of its own, is a separate alien will, and it's the thing that has the power, and it's doing stuff on its own against your will. And this is how you believe that the dream that you are having, that's coming from you, is turning around, is being separate from your dreaming, and suddenly has a life of its own, and it somehow is thinking for itself. And now it is the cause, and it's able to make things happen without your consent, without against your will. And now this dream thing that you put there, you now believe that it can now do stuff to you. and now you're a victim, and now you're suffering, and now you're being affected. You're an immortal being who cannot be affected by anything. You are permanence. You are eternal. You are unchangeable. You can't even make yourself change. God forces you against your will. He essentially, by his choice and with nothing to do with you at all, puts you in place, makes you be what you are, gives you the attributes that you have, manifests you, maintains you in his mind with the power of his mind, and keeps you held in heaven as a shining star of perfection that can never be defiled, changed, made sick, caused to suffer, or have anything happen to it, because that's his will, that you be permanent and perfect forever. So what is going on when we start claiming that stuff that we have caused and we are responsible for and we have made, we're suddenly accusing it of being responsible for us, causing us, making us, creating us, having power over us, having a will of its own and a mind of its own, and now we're saying I am at the effect of the very things that I have caused to happen. That is the root of all suffering. It's the cause of being a victim. It's putting yourself at the effect of stuff that you're making happen while trying to claim that you're not making it happen. so that you can get away with pretending that you are being affected by things in ways that you don't have any power to stop, even though you're the one making it do what it does to yourself. So then you portray yourself as this victim, this sufferer, this person who's abused, this recipient of effects and causes and powers outside yourself that you don't have any power over. You can't stop it. You can't do anything about it. Putting yourself in this, framing yourself in this role, in this position of, I didn't do this, and this disownership of yourself and your power, this portraying yourself as weak when you are all-powerful. I'm not afraid but all-powerful, says the Course. Putting yourself in this role of weakness and vulnerability, and can be attacked and can be changed and can be caused and can be affected and had power over and can suffer and can be forced into certain states and conditions against your will that you do not want. That role, that victimhood, that perspective on who you are and what's happening to you is totally bullshit. It is a huge self-deception. The body is something that you made in attempting to deceive yourself so that you could portray yourself and identify yourself with the body, given that you're an immortal being, so that you can pretend to be something that can be affected. You are immortal and you cannot die, but you can confuse yourself with things that do. So you confuse yourself with a body, with something that seems attackable, and then you claim that all kinds of causes other than you are the reason why, the responsibility for, the chain of consequence, why you're suffering, why this is happening to you, why the body's getting sick, why you're having vulnerability, why you're suffering and feeling pain, why the body's dying. You can then blame death on something other than yourself. You can say, it's your fault, brother, because of you I'm dying, because of the world I'm dying, because of nature, because of the environment and the food and time and space I'm dying. And you can then disown all responsibility and blame the whole damn thing on anything other than yourself. And so death is always self-inflicted by you in such a way that you make yourself out to be powerless, that you have no choice, that you can't make a decision to stop it, you can't control it, you can't prevent the symptoms, you can't stop the death from happening to you, you can't defend yourself, that you're weak. And then essentially it ends up in a state of mind, an attitude where you're basically saying, I give up, I am totally passive, I am absolutely powerless, I cannot do anything about it, so I have to accept it and be at peace with it. Bullshit. And then portraying yourself as being pure effect, where you don't have any causal power. You have no will to live, no ability to cause anything to change, no desire to stop it happening. And you basically lay down your life. You just sort of surrender to death and say, okay, death, happen to me, please, hurry up. And then whatever seems to be the causes of it, other than you, so long as it's not you, you basically just sort of give up living, and then the body dies. And now you can say, I didn't cause death. It's somebody else, something else, some kind of parasite, some bacteria, virus. It's some kind of disease, some kind of illness, some kind of external causes, other people, wars and bullets and guns, whatever it is, has made me die. Even though I'm an immortal being that can never die, I'm going to come up with a way to make it seem that I can prove that I can be dead, that the Son of God, who can never die, can somehow find a way to make it look like who he is, mistaken for a body that he's not, can somehow be destroyed, and that there's victory to the ego in destroying what we think is the Son of God as a body, so that we can scapegoat the whole frickin' world and accuse it of being the cause. And that causality is very close to sin, where we say, if you've caused me, you have sinned against me. If you've done something against my will, then you're a sinner. And so now we're saying all sin is outside myself. The whole world has sinned against me, causing me to die. I get to be the innocent victim. I get to be the one who plays the part and acts as if there's nothing I can do about it, so that I can come off as being perfectly innocent. That you can die because you're the innocent victim of the causes of death, and everyone else is the sinner. So this exonerates me from sin and guilt, and the belief that I have sinned and that I'm guilty, or that I'm responsible for anything, even that I'm even responsible for who I am. So in the dying, I get to perfectly scapegoat the whole universe and God, and blame my entire suffering on everyone other than myself. It is an act of absolute irresponsibility to die. It's a way of accusing everyone other than yourself of being the cause of you, of having any power, of desiring and really actually choosing any alternative. And we're kind of experts at this. We're very good at it. We're immortal beings, and we've come into this world that we have caused. We've caused the whole world to show up. We've decided what it will look like. We've invented everything that it contains. We have put and materialized all the objects and the people's bodies and the buildings and the cars and the events and the mountains and the forests and the planets and the galaxies. We put them there. Your brother thinks that he made the world with you, but like you, he denies that he made it. We're in denial that we made all this. This body that you made with the mind, this planet that you made with the mind. The mind is infinitely powerful, unlimited. There's nothing my holiness cannot do. Unlimited power, miraculous power. We made this dream world with our minds collaboratively, and we did it as an attack on ourselves and on God, in an act of denial and irresponsibility, trying not to be what we were, trying to deny and reject what we were, trying not to have what we had, trying to deprive ourselves and make ourselves suffer. And so we made up this whole frickin' world to suffer. The world is a picture of punishment. It's a picture of the crucifixion of God's Son. that we dreamed of anything other than immortality. We dreamed of mortality, we dreamed of death, we dreamed of sickness, we dreamed up suffering, we dreamed up world events, we dreamed up places to go and bodies to inhabit so that we could play out this bullshit drama of pretending that stuff's happening to us so that we can convince ourselves and deceive ourselves into believing that we are not immortal beings, we don't have any power, and we can just be pretending to be victimized all the time. And now we've gotten into this state of thinking it's normal and natural and commonplace and part of the laws of physics even that we put in place. We made and maintain the laws of physics. Jesus says in the Course, you maintain the world in your mind with your thoughts. Both heaven and earth are both in your mind. You have dreamed of a freaking planet. And Jesus talks about in the Course how you think that you came into a world and you think that it was here before you came. And yet you found what you wanted to find because you put it there in desiring to have it be there, and you made it be there, and then you showed up in the body and thought, oh, look what I've made. I'm going to pretend I didn't do this. I'm going to make sure it seems that I don't have any power. I'm going to portray myself as a weak victim so that I can have things happen to me, and then nobody will suspect that I'm actually an immortal being and I have the power of Christ. Now I can get away with murder, and I can play the part of being a victim and have the world plot against me and cause me to die and suffer and be sick. And all the while I can pretend that I am something other than permanent. Sickness is an attack upon the body, is anger taken out upon the body. Sickness is an attempt to prove you can be hurt. So there you are, an immortal being with massive power, pretending that you can be hurt by identifying yourself as a body and then hurting the body and try to prove to yourself and others that you can be hurt, when all along you are fucking immortal and nothing can ever happen to you ever, because that would be against God's will, and you cannot go against God's will. God is maintaining you and suspending you in his mind with his thought and his power and his will. You are exactly what he wants you to be forever, and there's nothing you can do to change that. So what the hell are we doing? Playing the part of victim and of sufferer and of sick person and of person who dies and person who is susceptible and who can be damaged and has things occur to them, and the freaking world has power over us. A world that we put there with our power. So A Course in Miracles is trying to tell us, hey dude, you need to get some correction here because you're very mistaken and you are deceiving yourself and you're in denial and you're disowning yourself and you're not owning your power, and you need to reclaim who you are, know yourself, be true to yourself, stop being a victim, stop believing that victimhood is even possible. Recognize that you have a power of decision and a power to choose, and nothing can happen to you unless you choose it. And you've hidden this fact from yourself. It says here in the part about the secret of salvation that you hid the secret from yourself in order to be able to suffer. Because if you knew and you remembered that you cause everything to happen, nothing can happen against your will, everything that occurs is chosen, everything in the world is deliberate, nothing happens by accident, ever. If you were to remember that, you wouldn't be able to play the part of it's happening and I don't know why. Somebody did this to me. Why did they do that? I'm being attacked against my will. I've contracted the disease and I didn't choose it. Here comes the cause of my demise. Oh no, I'm scared. It's happening against my will. I can't stop it. We wouldn't be able to do all these things if the secret of salvation was in our awareness. If we knew that we were the ones making all this happen, we wouldn't be able to do all this stuff. We wouldn't be able to get away with it and convince other people of it. We wouldn't be able to blame anybody. You wouldn't be able to accuse the world of sinning against you. You wouldn't be able to project guilt and sin. You wouldn't be able to act as if anything can occur to you at all that you haven't chosen, ever. And that if your body has a problem or it becomes sick and contracts an illness and gets an infection, picks something up from someone else, some stupid little virus that we blame fucking everything on as if it has the power to kill us, that we must be giving that power so that we can go through the motions of making it look like, oh, I'm suffering and I can't do anything about it. I have no power. I'm powerless and weak and I can be destroyed by a microbe. I'm an immense, unlimited, infinite, immortal being that has all the power in heaven and earth and space and time and has created a whole freaking world. But a microbe can kill me. We'll be able to get away with any of this. Any of this lying. If we stopped keeping the truth secret from ourselves. And the secret is that we're doing it to ourselves. The secret of salvation is this. You are doing this unto yourself. No matter what the form of the attack, this is still true. Whoever takes the role of enemy and of attacker, still is this the truth. Whatever seems to be the cause of any pain and suffering that you feel, this is still true. For you would not react at all to figures in a dream that you knew that you were dreaming. Let them be as hateful and as vicious as they may, they could have no effect on you, unless you fail to recognize that it is your dream. This single lesson learned will set you free from suffering, whatever form it takes. This is the secret of salvation. And we've kept this hidden from ourselves in order to get away with the constant blaming, the shifting of responsibility, the disowning, the dissociating from causes, thinking that stuff outside of ourselves, beyond the scope of our mind, outside of our control, beyond what we can have influence over, is doing things that we don't want it to do, and we can't stop it, and it's going to hurt us against our will, and that causes fear. We're doing it all to ourselves because, in the big picture, our mind is dreaming of a planet. We are dreaming of space and time. We are putting all of it there with our causal power. My mind is dreaming of a world and a body. My mind has earth in it. Heaven and earth are in your mind. You maintain the world in your mind with your thoughts. Projection makes perception. I am projecting a fucking universe. and it's coming from me, and I'm putting all the forms that I see there, I'm giving them all the meaning that they have. We are together collectively animating all the bodies. We are making the planets rotate, and we are spinning the galaxies. We are moving every single atom, every subatomic particle and quantum whatever bullshit. We are causing this dream. Our mind is very powerful and it is dreaming. The mind merely goes to sleep a while. It dreams of time, an interval in which all events are nowhere and all the changes are substanceless. And then it wakes up and carries on as if nothing happened. So if we're putting it there and we're causing it, and we are deliberately, intentionally on purpose making it happen, giving it the forces and the power to cause it to do the things that it does, by the mind's power alone, not any physics forces that we think they're all secondary, they're all side effects, they're all effects further down the line. We are causing all of it. If we forget that this is a dream and we take it to be reality, your mind will be in denial of the truth, and it will go into dissociation, and it will split, and it will disown the causation coming from your mind, and you'll start thinking the stuff that's out there is causal, because cause is always tied to reality. Whatever you believe is reality has the power and the causality in it, because reality, causality, will, mind, life, thought, this is all, it all goes together. So wherever you put that stuff, you think that it has all those properties. So if you think this dream that you're having, if you don't recognize and remember that it is a dream and it's not real, and if you forget, therefore, that it's coming from you, you're going to give it reality and power and alien will and thought and a life of its own. And now you cannot help but experience that if there's a cause outside of me, I am the effect of it. The only cause that you are at the effect of that is bigger than you and that is outside of you is God. You are at the effect of God. You are forever an effect of God. So if you think there's stuff outside of the scope of you that is the cause of you, you're saying the world is God. The world has power over you. The world is causing you, and it's making you, creating you, choosing what you are, deciding for you what you are and what you will experience and be capable of. It has total power over you to cause you to be whatever it decides it wants you to be, with you having no will and no power to change it or to resist it or to make it different. Just as in the same way as in heaven, you are 100% the effect of God and you don't have any say in the matter. Thankfully, you are created by a loving Creator, and He has given you wonderful attributes. So, freedom and joy and happiness. So you're forced to naturally be happy. If you believe the world is the cause, by forgetting that it's your dream, you will believe the world is 100% responsible for making you be what you are. And if it decides to kill you, you can't stop it, supposedly. If you forget that it's your dream, you instantly become the effect of what you have dreamed. And your dream turns against you. And now it seems as though the world is the cause of your suffering, the food is causing you to be upset, other people, what's on the television, the weather, that there are viruses and things in the world and diseases, and they can come along and hurt you against your will, and you can suffer without having chosen it. And you get into this backwardsness. This is false perception. It is backwards perception. It's like your mind is almost back to front, because instead of perceiving that everything's coming out of you as an extension of God, you're believing that everything's coming at you from outside, and it's all the arrows are pointing at you, and you're being affected, you're targeted, which threatens you and makes you afraid, instead of that you are cause. And this is your effect out there. You are projecting. You're responsible for what you're putting there. So when you lose sight of this secret, you lose sight of the fact that you have the power, you have the will, you have the mind, you have the thought, you have the life, you have the ability, and you're causal. If you lose sight of that, you will go into these states of confusion and insanity and nonsense, in which you claim and experience various forms of, it's doing it to me against my choice. This is happening and I didn't ask for it. Those people are the reason why I'm this way. I've become this way because I've been formed by the environment. I am this way because I inherited it from my other pieces of the dream that are the cause of my body. God is your only parent. And you get into this whole slippery slope of all unforgiveness, all deception, all illusions, all egotism, all victimhood, all suffering is happening because you are forgetting that this is your dream. Jesus says, unless you fail to recognize that it's your dream, you would not be able to suffer. Because if you're in this state of mind of ownership, of responsibility, and just like, yes, I'm doing this, I'm causing this, I chose this, so I can't exactly get away with blaming it on someone. I can't dislodge it and displace it and say, oh, this thing over here caused it. If you're in this clarity of mind, true perception, recognition, enlightenment is but a recognition, the awareness of dreaming, that you see the cause and effect. I see this, I see how I'm choosing this. I'm wanting that, I'm putting that there, this is coming out of me, I'm broadcasting this. I'm the one that's making it appear. I'm projecting this. Projection makes perception. Whatever I value, I want. Whatever I want, I believe in. I try to give it truth. I give it reality and give it life. And then whatever I want and what I believe in, I want to see. I want to have it. And then that makes me project. And I hallucinate that it's there, and I'm in love with it. And now I'm seeing it and perceiving it as a result. Perception is a result, not a cause. So if I want to change my mind, it's not going to happen by changing my perception. It's going to happen by changing my values and my beliefs that led to the projection, which caused the perception. And so as I change what's inside and the cause and the source of what I've projected and then perceived, my perception will automatically follow suit, because it's a consequence, an effect, a result of a chain reaction. So if I want to be in a position of remembering that I'm dreaming and I'm not at the effect of anything, because I'm immortal, I have to be willing to be extremely mistaken in all the ways that I think, that I claim I'm not that. All the ways that it's they doing it to me, and this is doing it to me, and I can be threatened by this, and this makes me susceptible, and this big dangerous contagious disease has the power to cause me to die against my will, and I could contract this illness if I put this piece of poison in my body, or I could be struck down by an asteroid that hits me in the head, have a car crash, and that's my way of, Not to be insensitive to anybody that knows anybody that's had car crashes, because it's terribly upsetting, but that would be another way to make it, to experience victimhood, to suffer, to be unhappy as a consequence of playing this role of believing that I'm caused by the world. I am vulnerable. I am susceptible. Things can happen to me. I don't have any strength. I don't have any power. I don't have any will, any mind, any ability, any causation to be able to decide what the fuck I want to happen in life. It's impossible that anything should come to me unbidden by myself. Even in this world, it is I who rule my destiny. What happens is what I desire. What does not occur is what I do not want to happen. This is from a different lesson. No one can suffer loss unless it be his own decision. No one suffers pain except his choice elects this state for him. No one can grieve or fear or think him sick unless these are the outcomes that he wants. No one dies without his own consent. Nothing occurs but represents your wish, and nothing is omitted that you choose. Here is your world, complete in all its details. Here is its whole reality for you. And it is only here that salvation is. This is a super excellent paragraph. So good that I'm going to go through it again. No one can suffer loss unless it be his own decision. Which means unless I choose to suffer loss, it is impossible. I have to literally, consciously, with awareness, with thought, decide on my own, with my free will, without any influence from anyone else, any other powers, any other causes, not even God, not even other people. I have to choose on my own the sole responsibility. I want to suffer loss. And then loss occurs and I suffer loss because I've chosen to suffer loss. No one suffers pain except his choice elects this state for him. If my body is in pain, regardless of what bullshit has been told to you as to the cause of that pain, regardless of it being, oh, I'm having drug withdrawal, it's because I was hit in the leg, it's because I have depression and it makes my body ache, it's because the weather makes me have aches and pains, it's because I bent over funny and now I've got a back pain. It cannot be true. There is no way any of that can be the real cause of that pain. Because if that were true, that means there is a cause outside of you in the world that has power over you which can destroy you against your will, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there is no hope there. There is no power. There is no salvation in that view. If there's any way that anything other than yourself can cause you to suffer, cause you to be sick, cause you to die, you have no way out. You've got no salvation. There's no hope. You're lucky as hell if you happen to escape. You're pretty much fucked. Which is why the secret of salvation cannot have exceptions. If there's a single exception to the rule that you can only experience what you choose, then salvation is not possible. And you can't go home to God, because now there's a cause in the world with a power over you that you can't stop, and it can keep you in hell forever. That's impossible, because God wills you to be with him, and there cannot be a power in the world with more power than God's will, or even equal, that can force you to stay in hell and suffering and sickness and death against God's will, or against your own will. If that were true, there is no salvation, there's no way out, there's no way to go home, there's no way to be healed, there's no hope, and life is bullshit, and you might as well just die anyway. So it has to be true that there's something you can do about it. Otherwise, what fucking hope do you have? There has to be a way, there has to be a causation, a chain of causal power where you can have an influence and you can have a say in the matter. Otherwise, you don't have free will. If you can be caused to be dead against your will is not free. If you can have someone come along and decide on your behalf that today's the day that you're going to suffer, your free will has been shitted all over. You don't have freedom, because obviously somebody can come along and choose at any time they please, against your will, against your freedom, to make stuff happen to you that you can't stop. If that's true, you don't have free will, and you're not a free will being, and you don't have a choice. You can't make any decisions. You are literally just a victim, and you're going to have to suffer whatever the world decides it wants to do to you. Fuck you. You know, it's like there's no way. It's like being condemned to hell with no escape. That's what the ego believes, and that's what the ego wants for you. All of this bullshit is all ego crap. It is not true. No one suffers pain except his choice elects this state for him. All these forms of pain in the body, in the mind, in the feelings cannot occur unless his choice elects this state for him. You have to have chosen it. If you want to claim that you haven't, even if you're not currently aware of the fact that you did or why you did, and it seems to be outside your awareness at the moment, doesn't mean that you didn't. Gotta find a quote here. You have to have put the pain there yourself. You have to have wanted it. You have to have chosen it. You have to have made it show up. You have to have actually caused it with the power of your mind. You had to put the pain in place in order for it to be true that you chose it, and by the power of your choice and the power that's in your mind and in your choice, that power has to have been able to have the power to do something. It has to have had the power to be able to make stuff happen. And that power put the pain there because you wanted to be in pain. Let's see. One-handed typing. Sickness is a defense against the truth. Defenses are not unintentional, nor are they made without awareness. They are secret magic wands that you wave when truth appears to threaten what you would believe. They seem to be unconscious, like you're not aware of the fact that you're choosing it, you're still choosing it, you're still maintaining it through an active, ongoing choosing. It seems to be unconscious because of the rapidity, the quickness with which you choose to use them. In a second, or even less, in which the choice is made by you You recognize exactly what you would attempt to do, and then you proceed to think that it is done. Who but yourself evaluates a threat and decides that escape is necessary and sets up a series of defenses to reduce the threat that you have judged as real? All of this cannot be done unconsciously. But afterwards, your plan requires that you must forget that you made it. So it seems to be external to your own intent. Love that phrase. Mwah. A happening beyond your state of mind. An outcome with a real effect on you, instead of one affected by yourself. This is a magnificent sentence. I'm going to have to read it again. In that second, or even less, in which the choice is made, you recognize exactly what you would attempt to do, and then you proceed to think that it's done. Now, I've read the wrong sentence, damn it. Okay, afterwards, your plan requires that you must forget that you made it, so that it seems to be external to your intent and happening beyond your state of mind, an outcome with a real effect on you, instead of one caused by yourself. It is in this quick forgetting of the part that you play in making reality, which makes defenses, sickness, suffering, seem to be beyond your own control. But what you have forgot can be remembered, given willingness to reconsider the decision, which is doubly shielded by oblivion. You're not remembering that you did this and why you did this to yourself is the sign that this decision still remains in force as far as your desires are concerned. And earlier to this part it says, sickness is not an accident. Like all defenses, it is an insane device for self-deception. Fantastic section. It's literally telling you that we always make conscious, aware choices, even if they're very quick, without much thought, very reactive or automatic seeming. We make these decisions with the free will that you have, that nothing can happen to against. It chooses, I'm going to do this, and it does it, and it uses the power of the mind and makes that happen, puts it in place, implements the situation, causes the events, builds the changes to physical matter, alters the body. Holy Spirit once showed me a visual experiential thing showing me how the mind uses forces to twist and distort the body. When the mind is trying to use the body for attacking purposes, it is always not straight, and it is in some way trying to manipulate, twist, deform reality, change things, adjust things. And so there are actually mental powers that are forces that like not like magnetism, but like sort of like an outward force that can move objects and grab a hold of stuff and manipulate it, like telekinesis almost. The mind is doing these things to the body through its attack thoughts, skewing the body's health and distorting its natural functions and damaging it and putting it into states that it isn't supposed to be in, that shows up as physical sickness. And we do that with the power of the mind. We are putting this stuff in place in order to deliberately suffer. So all of this now makes you think, you probably wondered to yourself, well, why the hell would you intentionally want to suffer? Why would anyone in their right mind choose to make themselves be in pain? Why would anyone in their right mind say, I want to have suffering, I want to experience sickness, I want to be dead, I want to have someone attack me, I wish to have the world victimize me serially and over a long period of time. I want to have a chronic, ongoing suffering that I can't escape from. Why the hell would someone in their right mind would not choose this? So the fact that you do choose it shows that you cannot be in your right mind when you're making these decisions. There must be some confusion about what is true and what is real. And this confusion is a confusing of what is true and what is false. You get them switched around and you don't recognize them properly. You think that things that aren't true are true, and you think that things that are true are false. And now God, who is true, you think he's an enemy and he's evil, and sickness and suffering and death, which is false, you think these have truth to them and that they are what you want and that you're attracted to them. Everyone is naturally embracing of and attracted to and wants to keep and chooses and maintains whatever it is that they think is truth, is real, is valuable. And no matter what that is, whether it's God's truth or the ego's bullshit, if you want it to be the truth, you will feel protective of it, you will try to support it, you'll defend it against anything that is opposite to it, you will value it, you'll cherish it and nurture it, even if the thing that you think is true is actually false in the big picture. The thing that you think is valuable has no value in reality. And even if the thing is destructive, harmful, attacking, murderous, deadly, some form of suffering, when you get confused and you think that what's true is false, and things that aren't real are real, and things that are forms of suffering are not forms of suffering, and you literally can get to a state of believing that death is salvation, that death is life, that hell is actually heaven. Massive confusion, insanity leads to these kind of perceptions where you're actually believing, I need to suffer in order to stay alive. I want to be sick so that I can keep existing. This is how sickness is a defense against the truth, because you mistake the truth for something false, and you say, okay, God, you are not the truth, you are false, and because you're false, you are against my truth, and therefore you're attacking my truth, and you must be the evil, and my truth is holy and pure. I don't want you, I want this. And you now think God, who you think is false and evil, is now attacking you as an enemy, and you need to defend yourself against it, because whatever you believe is true and whatever you value, you identify with as yourself, and you think, this is true of me. Whatever you think is true, you will apply to yourself. This is my truth, this is what I am, this is what I'm defining myself as, this is how I value myself. So then you think that because God's and the truth, the real truth, is your enemy and is attacking your truth, you need to defend against it by increasing a separation, moving further away from life and happiness and health. The withdrawal into pain, misery, suffering, unhappiness, depression, sickness, physical damage, death is literally going to save you from that, because you're so confused and you don't recognize that these things are not good for you. You think we literally get confused and believe that death is life and suicide is salvation and suffering is going to make you happy, and you're better off staying sick, and you need to have sickness in order to make yourself safer. That sickness is defending you, that it's better for you to be afraid and anxious and hide in a corner in the darkness, because that will make you safer. Or that you need to rely on and keep and maintain and protect forms of suffering because they keep you safe from God. They keep you away from the truth. They're a way by which you can resist the truth and deny what's really true, and therefore you think that it's helping you. You think that this is saving you. So we make ourselves sick in a confused state, a mistaken state of mind where we don't recognize what the truth is. Therefore we're insane, we're not in our right minds, and we are mistaking things, and we mistakenly then believe that these things that are not life, are not immortality, are not heaven, and are not salvation, are not helpful. We think that they're going to serve us and save us and help us and make our life better. And so we inadvertently, seemingly, choose suffering as a way to escape the wrath of God and try to get away from what we think God is, this horrifying, judging, condemning asshole we don't want to be near, and that we recoil into evil, into self-destruction, into self-harm, into suicide, into self-attack and forms of self-punishment and self-loathing and hatred, to try to mitigate God's punishment that we believe we deserve, and which surely must be coming because we believe mistakenly that God is a punishing evil bastard. And so we go choose this shit, believing that stuff that hurts us is going to be helpful. And now we make ourselves suffer on purpose. We choose to be sick. We want to keep being sick. We want to maintain all of this victimhood role. We want to have things happen to us that upset us. We want to be punished. And we want to die. And we want to... It is self-destructive because we're confused. But we are choosing it. I think I'm triggering off some emotional reactions here, saying all this. So real salvation, which is forgiveness, the secret of salvation is the owning up to the fact that you are the one who is responsible for all this stuff, that is coming from you, Nothing happens without your consent, not even death. No one dies unless they choose to do so, which means every single death of every body, no matter the fake lies and stories surrounding how it was killed, which is a facade over the mind's use of various things to make it look like, to portray a victimhood event that is still chosen at the mind level and caused in dreaming. We dream of disasters and accidents to make it look like that is happening to us against our will. All the bodies that die, every single person that was in those bodies made those bodies die, chose to die. And A Course in Miracles is literally telling you, if you would stop trying to destroy yourself, you would not have to go through that shit. You don't have to die. It says you cannot be hurt unless you choose to hurt yourself. So what this is telling you is that once you take back this power and own this causation and this responsibility without guilt, it's a recognition that all the things that you thought were external causes, laws of physics, things separate from you that you think can cause you, have power over you, can do stuff on their own, none of those things were ever really doing those things to you without your participation. Your mind was maybe using these things as props and characters to attack you, but you always had a hand in them, like they were puppets, and you were always the one choosing what they do in your dream, making them act out. This is why it says in The Secret of Salvation about how it doesn't matter who appears to be playing the roles of victim and victimizer. It's still you doing it to yourself, because all the belief that you have, there is a cause separate from me, causing me against my will. That's the belief in all the causes of death, all the causes of sickness, all the causes of suffering and unhappiness in the world, is all based on this belief that there is a cause that isn't you, and it's out there somewhere, and it has a mind of its own, and it can decide where and when to attack you, and that there's nothing you can do about this because it's separate from you, so you just have to suffer. As you own up to being the ruler of the universe, in which nothing happens unless you choose it to happen, consequence, you are cause and these things are effect, and you never are at the effect of anything because you're immortal. It has to be that you take all of these beliefs in these external causes and you stop believing that they are other than you. Stop believing that there is a separate power and an alien will and a disease and a medicine and a natural disaster or whatever. You have to stop believing that these things are out there independently doing stuff to you. The belief in that is a belief in death. It's the belief that you can suffer. It's a belief that there is a way that something can happen to you without your choosing it, and it can decide to destroy you whenever it wants. For you to reclaim the secret of salvation and recognize that you're doing it to yourself, no matter what, that this is your dream, all of those things, all those causes that you believe in, you have to stop believing them. And you have to recognize that it's actually your mind and its power that is doing all this stuff. And therefore, if you were to just rein that in and stop doing these things, there is no other power. There is no alien will. There is no cause in the world with the power to bring oppression or make you ill or sad or weak or frail. There are no ways that your brother can cause you in any way to experience anything. And literally, you are completely invulnerable, incapable of suffering, unable to be attacked, because only you can make yourself suffer. Only you can attack yourself. You are an immortal being and you cannot die. You can't even be hurt. You can't even be made to be unhappy. So you have to own that. Which means you cannot be believing that there is a cause of sickness other than your mind. There cannot be causes of death outside of your power. There cannot be a power over you other than your own power. And so if you were to stop hurting yourself, you will be free of death forever. If you would stop making yourself sick, you would never be sick again. If you would stop attacking yourself, you would stop being unhappy forever. Because only you are the cause of what you are choosing with your free will. If this were not true, you do not have free will. Because your freedom of your will has to mean I am always free. I can go where I want to go. I can do what I want to do. I am unimpeded and unlimited. I am completely free to make whatever choice I want to make. I am free to cause whatever I want to happen. I am free not to cause things that I don't want to occur. Myself is ruler of the universe. I have freedom. If I truly have freedom, which has been given by God, and it has, God gave you, shared His freedom with you, gave you absolute freedom, meaning that you are now an independent co-creator by your free will. God does not coerce. God does not force. God does not control and manipulate. You have to freely, willingly, of your own free will and your own free decision in your mind, choose to will with God. Heaven is a choice I must make. If you are free, it cannot be true that anything can ever come along and deprive you of freedom, that anything can ever come along and say, I'm going to deny your free will and I'm going to cause this change in you against your freedom. I'm going to make stuff happen to you that you don't want. That can never, ever be true if you truly have free will, which is absolutely free. The freedom that God has given you, with the power that He has established you as permanently free. So it cannot ever be true that anything can happen to you without you choosing it. You have to give consent at all times. You can't experience anything unless you choose to experience it. You can't go along with anything unless you choose to agree with it. You can't get into any kind of states of mind or emotion or reactions or body or anything without your consent and your free will choice. That you have to say, yes, I agree, I want this. I choose this. This is what I want. This is the power of your decision. And the workbook lesson, The Power of Decision is My Own, is where this comes from. No one can suffer loss unless it be his own decision. No one suffers pain except his choice selects this state for him. Nobody can grieve or fear or think that he's sick unless these are the outcomes that he wants. No one dies without his own consent. Nothing occurs. That's huge and encompassing all events in space-time. Nothing occurs but represents your wish, and nothing is omitted that you choose. So like by this same token, if I say, I choose this, it is there. You cannot be denied. You cannot have it be that you will something and it does not occur. You cannot have it be that you don't will something and it occurs. All of creation is willful, deliberate, intentional, purposeful, meaningful, chosen freely. This is natural. This is the real underlying causation of all reality and all illusions. Every single thing that occurs must have been chosen by someone. There can't be bubbles floating in the air unless someone's mind puts bubbles in the air. There cannot be a person laying on the ground seeming to be dead, having just been hit by a car, unless there is consent and choice, and both of these people have consented and chosen to, for some reason, make this happen, go through the motions, maybe as a way to learn that they shouldn't be attacking themselves and making themselves suffer in car crashes. But it is chosen, and there is no victim, there is no accident, there's no such thing as randomness and chaos. These are illusions. Chaos is an illusion of it seeming like stuff is just spontaneously just happening on its own. just randomly, just out of nowhere, just sort of blip plop. Here's some death, here's a bit of murder, here's some sickness, have some suffering. Okay, but today, what's on today's menu? Let's just make something up on the spot. Does not happen like that. In fact, and the Course says there are no accidents in salvation. And salvation is the secret of salvation. And salvation is the recognition of this causality. It's coming from you. It's your fault. So let's talk a little bit about this blame and the guilt that is associated with owning up to responsibility for causing yourself to suffer. Because whenever I've brought this up with people, I talk about how if you're sick, you chose to be sick. There's two lines in the Course that say almost the same thing, and it basically says, those who are sick do not love themselves, because if they love themselves, they would heal themselves. And there's another wording of that that's quite similar. And often that seems to induce guilt, especially in people who have sickness, people who believe in people being sick, and people who are upset about sickness and react to other people's sickness and other people's upset about sickness, and get all this ego reaction coming up, all this guilt that it sort of implies that people are to blame for things that they don't feel they should be going through, that they feel bad about, and they, makes them feel like they're not being a proper parent or something, or whatever it is. And the whole unfairness illusion of it, that they're mistreated, that even the people that are abused by some horrendous seeming person, it's not possible for somebody to be abused against their will. That alone is a radical fact that many people will just say, fuck you, that's ridiculous. How cruel is that, and how uncompassionate that is. But it is a fact that even in cases where someone is horrifyingly abusive and harmful and hurtful and raping and sex abuse and all the rest of it, torture and murder, no one dies without their own consent. Nobody suffers unless they choose it. Nothing happens unless they want it to happen. So, because this has to be true, otherwise there's no salvation. It has to be true, otherwise you don't have free will. It shows you that the way that things appear in these situations is not the whole story. The way that the person seems to be being victimized is not the whole story. The way that it seems unfair is not the whole story, because you wouldn't come to that conclusion if you knew and recognized how this person is trying to hurt themselves. If somebody's like suffering and they're having a terrible disease and it's just awful and painful, if you feel sorry for them, you're joining with them in false empathy. You're making the sickness real, you are condemning them to hell, and you're not being forgiving. Mainly because that means you don't recognize that what appears to be the situation isn't the whole story. This person is not being victimized against their will. They aren't experiencing effects that they didn't choose. There is no accident to how this is happening. There is consent in their mind. There is a deliberate purpose to every sickness, because it's all intentional. So it's like if someone gets sick, it's for a reason. They wanted to be sick in order to defend themselves against the truth. The sickness is serving a purpose of defending their life, giving them a sense of safety and continuance. That we make ourselves sick because we're trying to preserve our life against the threat of the truth. So if someone's in this horrible, sick, suffering state, even if on the surface it seems, oh, this is horrible, it's awful, I feel sorry for them, commiserate, it makes you feel compassion, you feel sad for them, you feel like crying because it's so unfair seeming. There is no unfairness in salvation. And if you don't see past the illusion of how this sickness and this suffering appear at first glance, you are just as deceived as they are in their self-deception. These people who are portraying themselves as purely victimized are not just being victimized. They are doing a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole bunch of causality, choice, making things happen, having a reason for it, a purpose for it, a reason to keep it, a desire not to let it go and be healed. Those who do not love themselves are sick, because if they loved themselves, they would heal themselves. Anybody that loves themselves would bless themselves with joy and happiness and love and healing, and would be free of suffering, and would just wash away all suffering and all sickness and death. And you have the power to do that, but you might be really out of touch with it, but you have the power in your mind to do that. So the people who are suffering, who always seem to be victims, who always portray themselves as not the one who's choosing it, and, oh, I really want to get rid of this, I want this to be stopping, I want it to be over. They don't really. Let's just be honest about it. They don't want it to be gone because they have a need for it, and it's helping them to fulfill that need. And so long as they think they need it, they will keep choosing it. And that initial appearance of victimhood is a person who very deliberately is self-abusive, self-sabotaging, wants to die, believes that they deserve to be punished, is trying to accuse themselves and others of sin, has condemned themselves with death and sin and guilt, and now is in this state of suffering where it obviously seems they're calling out for love and they want to be helped, but at the same time they, as the Course says, they have denied their own power to help themselves. They have resisted and rejected their own healing power, and now the light in another mind must shine into theirs, because that light that's in my mind could heal this person by giving them what they are denying themselves. So everyone that's in suffering, no matter what it is denying themselves happiness and freedom and truth. And that's why they're suffering. So you've got to be careful not to buy into the bullshit and the story and the victim story, even if it seems to be going against the grain of feeling sorry for people. It is an ego form of compassion. It is fake empathy. It is sympathy. It is a way of believing in your brother's weakness and not recognizing any kind of power that you or him have as a way for you to keep him in sickness so that you don't use your power to heal him. Pretty convenient that we then, by commiserating with a sufferer, are basically empowering them to stay in suffering. Because if we were in a state of empowerment and we had owned up to the power of decision and had claimed the power of the mind and knew secret of salvation that we do this stuff and we are the cause and the dreamer, we would also know, I can choose that this not happen, and therefore I can heal the sick and raise the dead. Here we go. This is the second part of the part about secret of salvation. It's the second paragraph. The Holy Spirit will repeat this one inclusive lesson. This is all you need to learn, until it has been learned, regardless of the form of the suffering that brings you pain. Whatever hurt you bring to him, he will make answer with this very simple truth. For this one answer takes away the cause of every form of sorrow and pain. The form affects his answer not at all, for he would teach you but the single cause of all of them, no matter what their form, and you will understand that miracles reflect the simple statement, I have done this thing, and it is this that I would undo. That is total responsibility, that you're owning up to the secret of salvation and owning the power and recognizing the choice you made and the reason why you chose it and choosing again. I must have made a wrong decision because I'm not at peace. I made the decision myself. I chose not to be at peace. If I want to be at peace, I need to make a different decision because I want to be at peace. Miracles, in A Course in Miracles, reflect the simple statement, I have done this thing, and it is this that I would undo. So by this recognition, this awareness of dreaming, this owning up to your power, you have in you the innate power of God to be able to recognize, I did this, nobody else did this, they didn't do it, this thing isn't responsible for it, I'm not at the effect of the world, it's not because of this food I ate, it's not because of this disease and this virus, it's not because of this thing that happened to my physical body by an external device, it's because of me. No matter how it looks, because this is my dream, I'm putting it there, I chose this suffering. And therefore, I have the power to choose to suffer, and I can use that same power to undo the very thing that I made, because I have power over it. Jesus says you have the power to dominate all things you see in the world merely by recognizing what you are. So whatever you have the power to do, you have power over it. You can cause it. It depends on you. So if I say, you are going to exist, the thing must exist. If I say, you don't exist anymore, the thing has to stop existing, because there's cause and effect. If you take away the causing, the effect has to vanish. And this is part of miracle working. This is all over the Course. Illusions recognized must disappear. So going back to the thing, there's a great risk of believing, reacting, that you're being blamed and that you're guilty by this secret of salvation. That if we're saying you're responsible for everything, because the ego believes that sin is real, because the ego believes that you really are guilty, that there are causes and effects in the world outside of your control, that you have sinned against God and it was real and it had real consequences, the ego is very rooted in the belief that sin is real. If we say you are responsible in any way, and the ego is present and it has a belief in sin, it is going to combine these two things and say you are responsible for sin. And that belief is an extension of the belief that you are a sinner. It has to result in guilt. Guilt is the automatic consequence of the belief that you're a sinner. If you did it, you deserve to be guilty. You should be guilty. It makes sense that you would be guilty if you did sin. So once we start introducing the idea of you being responsible, the ego in you is going to be pretty pissed off, and it's not going to be happy about this news, because it's going to be starting to experience, well, if I'm responsible, then it's my fault. What I did in my sin was my fault, and I really did it, or I really am guilty. And it triggers off a whole shitload of ego reactions because of this inability to separate out unreal happenings from the reality that you are the dreamer of the dream. Making the dream real is the belief in sin. Not recognizing that you are the one dreaming it is the belief in sin. So if you're in that place and you're not in the recognition that you are the cause of everything, and the idea is introduced to you that you are the cause of all this stuff, you're going to probably start having reactions and feeling, well, I'm guilty. I must be making the babies die. It must be my fault that all the people are suffering and starving. It must be my fault. This is the ego's response, and it makes logical sense because it believes in real sin, and it thinks that all these sufferings and these sicknesses are real. So if it's saying you did it, you're the cause of it, there's a huge guilt response. But the guilt is not valid, and it's not authentic. All guilt is fake because sin is not real. So if you haven't really sinned, and the dead babies are not real, and the wars and the destruction are not really happening because this is a dream, taking responsibility for dreaming it and causing it does not mean that you are responsible for causing real suffering, real sickness, and real death. So there's a process to go through, learning to sort out in owning the responsibility of your power in terms of letting go of the sense of being responsible for things that aren't real, and owning up to the reality, owning up to what you really are responsible for being, which is your innocence. You are responsible for being the way, for staying the way God created you. You're responsible for every choice you make. You're responsible for the use of your free will. But you're not responsible for causing death, because death isn't real. So let's say somebody murders someone in this world. To say that they're responsible for dreaming of murder cannot mean that they're guilty. But if we say, well, they did actually murder some other person's body, the body is dead, they are responsible for that. And if we say that that's real, then that responsibility must mean they really, in reality, did commit a sin and they deserve to die. And they should be punished, and they go to prison and they get punished, blah, blah, blah. But it's a dream. They dreamed of murdering a body that was a dream. The body is a dream. So if they dreamed of it, and if they are aware that they dreamed it, and they didn't buy into it, and they didn't make themselves at the effect of the dream, and they didn't take the role of victim, they wouldn't have taken the role of victimizer, and they probably wouldn't have positioned themselves teaching death, using the body for attack, or trying to be murderous through the body, and so they probably wouldn't have murdered. But their innocence isn't because they didn't murder. Their innocence is because it's a dream. The lack of a murder in a frame of mind that believes in murder is still murderous. A mind that is holy, that is dreaming of things happening, that doesn't believe they're real, will not put itself in the dream as an attacker, in my opinion, because that motive would have to come from a mind that is not holy and is not loving. So they probably wouldn't show up as that in the dream, and they wouldn't do those things. But just because they're not doing things doesn't mean they're innocent, and they're innocent because this isn't reality. The atonement is a recognition that what you think your brother did to you has not occurred because this isn't real. So there's all kinds of guilt that comes along with the responsibility piece, because the ego is still present, and the ego interprets the responsibility as being a connection to sin, because sin is very close to the idea of causality. If I caused this sin, or I did this to you, that's sort of a causation. So if we're saying I'm responsible for everything I've caused, ego says, yeah, you're the guilty motherfucker, you're the one who destroyed this person's flower bed, you're the one who crapped in the cereal, and you're the one who poked this person's eye out. But it's not true. So we have to sort of sort out, how can I be responsible for everything at the level of awareness of dreaming, of transcending false perception, being aware, being very deliberate, without believing in sin, so that I can be responsible without being guilty, so that I can be empowered and causal and choosing and only having happen what I choose to happen, and being in this state of being ruler of the universe, very deliberate, where I want this to happen, it happens. I choose this and there it is. The miracle working power. Jesus can say, I will that there be 5,000 fishes. Here they are. Cause and effect, uninterrupted. And it only gets interrupted when you go down in perception and you're going into victimhood and you start clashing with yourself and you start tying your hands and conflicting with your own will and cancelling out your own power. When you become powerful, you become more in tune with the mind's constructive abilities to cause things to happen by your will, and you now become the clarity of this. There's a power in me, and a choice and a decision in my free will, and I choose this, and it occurs instantly, out of nowhere. I choose that there appear to be a bowl of fruit. There it is, manifests out of nowhere. That's the power of the mind. Jesus had that ability. There's a little line about teachers of God. Look on dreams. God's teachers choose to look on dreams a while. Where is that line? Down here. Okay. God's teachers choose to look on dreams a while. It is a conscious choice, for they have learned that all choices are made consciously, with full awareness of the consequences. The dream says otherwise, but who would put his faith in dreams once they're recognized for what they are? Awareness of dreaming is the real function of God's teachers. They watch the dream figures come and go, shift and change, suffer and die, yet they are not deceived by what they see. They recognize that to behold a dream figure as sick and separate is no more real than to regard it as healthy and beautiful. Unity alone is not a thing of dreams. It is this that God's teachers acknowledge as behind the dream, beyond all seeming, and surely theirs. So God's teachers make very conscious choices, aware of all the consequences, because they're in a state of mind where everything is very deliberate. You don't do a single thing without intending to. Nothing happens without your consent. You don't cause anything unless you meant to do so. You are very constructive. You don't do anything to hurt yourself and others because you just don't choose it. You don't make sickness happen. You don't make death happen. You choose to maintain the body in a state of perfection, a symbol of eternal life. The body now is healthy. Its health is guaranteed. The body cannot be sick. The body becomes what you use it for. Use it for attack, and the body becomes attacked, and now it becomes weak, and it becomes sick and frail, and it suffers and it dies because of your choice. If you choose, I'm going to attack, that makes you separate from life and induces sickness. Use it to bring the word of God to those who have it not, and the body becomes holy, or has a holy purpose, a holy use. And being holy, it cannot be sick, nor can it die. And as Jesus says elsewhere, once the guilt is gone from the mind, there's nothing for the sickness to return to, because sickness is just a form of guilt. So if you take responsibility without guilt, it heals the body. The body gets to a state where it's exactly how you want it. It always is exactly how you want it. But you want it to represent innocence and harmlessness and freedom from pain. In the hands made gentle by his touch, the Holy Spirit lays a picture of a different you. It's a picture of a body still, but for what you are cannot be seen or pictured, but this one has never suffered pain. Show it to your brother. He will see that all of his sins have been exonerated. Blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other teaching, but you can, using the power of your mind and your freedom of will and your choice and nothing else, you can cause your body to be perfectly healed and healthy, and to represent an eternal life, to be a symbol of immortality, freedom from sickness and death. And you can maintain it indefinitely for as long as you damn please, until you no longer have a use for it. And there's a protection at the bottom of Sickness is a Defense Against Truth. It says that there's a protection of the body by such a mind, that it's supernaturally protected and it cannot become sick against your will. Secret of salvation, you're doing it to yourself. If you don't choose to be sick, you cannot be sick. If you don't choose to die, you cannot go towards death. If you choose resurrection and life, you can only make the body resurrect towards life, and it becomes a symbol of life. Behold me, brother, at your hand I live. It now accuses your brother of innocence, harmlessness, sinlessness, teaches him of his innocence and represents his innocence. And he looks to it and beyond its symbolism to the innocence in you, recognizes his own innocence because of the lack of sin, the lack of the proof of sin, and he now finds himself to be guiltless and sinless, and he is healed along with you. So it can seem difficult to own up to what you're doing to yourself. It can seem to be guilt-inducing. It can seem to be some kind of blame, unfairness. But all of that unfair, I didn't choose this, I don't want this, it's not happening by my will, and all the complaining about, oh, this frickin' thing's happening to me still and I can't do anything about it, I wish it would stop. And all the victimy, I can't do anything about it, I can't heal it, I can't change it or fix it. All of that is ego. It's all a rejection of the power that you have to do something about it. It's literally someone sitting there making a lot of noise about all the reasons why, the excuses why they have to remain the way they are, putting on a show to make it sound like they really want to be in a better place, so that you don't realize that they're secretly desiring to stay the same, so that you won't take the suffering away, so they can carry on with it and it can keep serving the purpose that they're using it for. It's not what it appears to be. And you can say there's compassion for people that are suffering. Certainly, you can. If you make their sickness real, you will feel sorry for them, and you will feel upset. You will not be able to laugh, and you will be sad about the horrendous cruelty and unnecessary suffering that people are going through in your false perception, your belief that this is really happening. That blinds you to being able to be helpful, because that's false empathy and it's keeping them imprisoned. So if you want to be helpful to others, you have to be willing to be helpful to yourself by recognizing that you do help yourself. You are the cause of everything you experience. You are the chooser. You are the one who has the freedom to choose. Jesus says in the Course, choice is the last freedom that you have in this world. You can choose whether or not to go home to God or stay in hell. You can choose whether to wake up and be happy or to stay unconscious and suffer. So all the stories about unasked for suffering is bullshit, covering up the fact of you having free will, covering up the fact that secretly you're an immortal being, covering up the fact that you chose this and put it in place, that you have given your consent to everything that's happening. It's all the noise and all the poor me and all the suffering thing. It's the victim mentality. It's a blindness. It's an unawareness of how people are making themselves suffer. Everyone in the world is deliberately hurting themselves to try to prove that they're not immortal, because they have rejected God and who they are. So they're trying to portray themselves, trying to make ourselves out to be something that we are not, which is what ego is. It's an idea of who you aren't. It's an idea of not having a self. So we keep trying to make ourselves out to be something that God did not create us to be. And those are choices, decisions that we are free to make. God is not going to force you to choose otherwise. You are free to suffer for as long as you want to. Pain is not without its limits. Tolerance for pain is not without limit. Sooner or later, everybody realizes there must be a better way, because you can choose to make yourself in pain and suffering. But being in that pain, in that denial of happiness, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. It's not going to be a happy experience. It's not going to be bringing you peace. It's going to be a constant state of stress and disaster and awkwardness and limitation. It's not going to sell itself particularly well and make it be something that you really want forever and ever. Sooner or later, when you've had enough pain and you've given yourself enough suffering that you never deserved in the first place, everyone eventually gets to a point where they're like, fuck this, I am done suffering. I'm done being in pain, I'm done being sick, I'm done dying, I'm done making myself a victim, I'm done fucking trying to make out that it's everybody else's fault. I'm done disowning myself. I'm done with all this story about how I'm a victim. I'm completely done with making it seem that the world has power over me. And I'm done disowning the power of my mind. Jesus talks in the Course about how we deny that the thought has the power to produce real influence, because we're afraid of the power of the mind, and we deny it in order to try to play down the fact that the mind is very powerful. and we try to make out that our thoughts do not cause anything to happen. And I can think about someone and it doesn't affect them, and it does. Or that I can just sort of think here inside this bubble and it has no impact at all on the world. That what's happening in here is separated off, disassociated from what's out there, and that stuff out there isn't coming from me. That's the whole illusion of all the bullshit that we're telling ourselves. We're not aware, we're not owning up to, I'm the cause of this. This is my dream. I'm making this shit happen. I have chosen this. I have made this suffering. So if you're having a suffering of any kind, a physical sickness, a pain, an emotional upset, a good place to start, excuse me, extra long nibble, is with taking that full responsibility and saying, if you own up to it really intensely, you're going to notice that your reasons for choosing it start to come into your awareness. So if you're like, okay, my free-willed mind that is not a victim of anything, that makes all decisions and has all power, must have chosen, I did choose this, I wanted this, I put it in place, I made it happen, I caused it, I produced the effects with the power of my mind, I had a reason to do so, I needed it, I wanted it, I desired it, I brought it into being myself, I had a use for it, and I chose it with my own decision and my free will, because I wanted to do something. If you will admit that to yourself about whatever the suffering is, and ask yourself, why did I want this? Because if you're in denial and you say, I didn't want this, I didn't choose it, you're not going to get in touch with why you did it. So you've got to be very honest about the fact that metaphysically it must have come from you. I did this, and it is this that I would undo. I put this in place. If I'm not at peace, it's a decision I made myself. I made a decision because I wanted this. That's owning up to doing what you've done to yourself, what you think you've done to yourself. If you do that, you'll be much closer to tuning into the reason why you did this. Like I had a thing up here that was painful. It was like a spot or something under the skin, and so I did a forgiveness thing about it. And like, okay, I must have put this here. I made it happen. I made it show up. I created this myself. I had a reason for doing it. I put it there. I wanted it. It served a purpose. I had a need for it. What came to my mind was that in the day previous, I had this moment where I felt an attack thought, and I felt hateful towards myself and someone else, and I wanted to portray myself as a victim, and I wanted to make them wrong and have a way to show them that they have done something grievous to me, grievous bodily harm, even though they hadn't. And so I manifested a sickness symptom in order to accomplish this. So I gave it to myself. And there was another time where I was approaching the Holy Spirit, and I had this fear that because I had seen how we were one, how we were joined, and there wasn't anything between us, my ego did not like that whatsoever. Saw it as a threat. Saw it as a meaning that the Holy Spirit can access me and undo the ego. I instantly put up a defense to shut him out. And that defense made me feel like I was withdrawing and hiding and cowering in fear, and I felt afraid, and induced an ear infection, and because I didn't want to hear this truth. and my ear got blocked up, and it was ringing, and it was painful, and blah, blah, blah. And I had to come to admit that I had given this to myself as a defense against this truth, and I wanted it, and I had a use for it and a reason for putting it there, and I needed it. I thought I wanted and needed it to serve, to defend me, to keep me safe. And so I had induced illness. And in that recognition and in trusting without fear to return to that truth of my connection to the Holy Spirit, trusting Him without the fear of the reaction, it very, very quickly healed. And within a matter of hours, all the symptoms disappeared. Because I had done this thing, and I could see how I had done it, and why I did it, and what the purpose was, and the reason for it. So I could see, by my choice, I choose not to have this. I don't need it anymore. I don't need to serve this purpose anymore. I don't want to be defended anymore. I don't need to be defended, so I don't need the sickness. And so you drop it. You just let it go. Your mind stops maintaining it. You stop giving it energy and keeping it suspended there to serve you. So it just disappears. Illusions recognized disappear. And very quickly it was healed. So we give ourselves deliberate suffering, but we can also give ourselves healing. We can also be free from sickness and free from death if we choose to do so. Death is not inevitable. It's not something that you just have to go through. Sickness isn't something you have to tolerate. You don't have to put up with shit. Take your power back. Own it. You are the cause and the reason, so you need to get in touch with that so that you can use that power to choose otherwise and make this shit go away so that you stop suffering, you stop being unhappy, you stop being sick. You have the power to decide never to be sick or dead ever again. Heaven is the result of that choice. Heaven is a choice I must make. You can only choose that through choosing to accept atonement. Atonement is the only responsibility. Of course, says it's your sole responsibility. And must be time to finish. And your one responsibility of accepting atonement means the responsibility of accepting this salvation, that you have this power to choose whatever happens. And I must have chosen that too. And so by choosing to accept the atonement, you're saying, I own up to all responsibility for choice and power, and therefore I have the power to choose heaven. And I am the one, if I choose it, as Jesus says in the Course, if you commend your spirit into the hands of God, nothing can prevail against you. That you can choose to be invulnerable, because you can choose to accept your immortality. You can choose to own up to being immortal. You can choose to recognize and accept that you have never been hurt. You can never be hurt. You have never suffered. You cannot suffer. It's always been fake. And that you cannot die. There is no death. The Son of God is free. You can choose to go home to God and wake up. Because you are responsible for making that choice. Because you have absolutely free will. And no one can stop you. If you choose to go home, no one can stop you. Nothing in the world is keeping you in hell other than your choice. If you choose not to suffer, there's nothing that would not vanish instantly. And if you choose to no longer have a need for sickness, it will instantly disappear. If you choose that you no longer honestly want it, and this doesn't mean the state of victimhood and not realizing that you cause it, and complaining about, oh, I don't want this is sucking, I don't want it. That isn't a willingness. That isn't wanting to be free of it. That's really staying in it and just making a lot of noise about it. When you truly do want it, Jesus says in the Course, all healing, if you heal because you want to be healed, not because you wish for healing, not because you're faking it, but if you truly, genuinely are choosing it, you will it, and it happens, and you must be healed because you've chosen to be healed. You have the power to be healed. Those who love themselves heal themselves. And that means you're free to choose at all times. You can stay in suffering, you can get happier, you can get sadder, you can make the body suffer and die, you can make it healed and resurrected. You can come and go as you please because you're free, because God gave you freedom. So everything that you do is chosen. Everything you want, you want. Everything that you don't want, you want. There is no such thing as things happening to you that you haven't chosen. There's no such thing as causes of death other than you. There's no such thing as reasons why you're sick other than the reasons that you made up. There's nothing in the world that can keep you here, or maintain sickness, or induce illness, or cause you to be upset for any reason. It's all, you are the cause. I am the cause. I accept the responsibility. I own the responsibility for sight. I have chosen everything that I'm seeing. Everything that's happening, I want to happen. If I am upset about something someone's doing, it's because I am choosing to be. If I'm having suffering, it's because I want to be suffering, because I'm not in my right mind. So choose again. Because your choice is your freedom, and it's the only freedom you have left. And you do have the freedom. You don't have to have things happening to you that you don't want. But you have to be willing to be fully responsible, without guilt, fully responsible, fully deliberate, being certain, making clear certain decisions that are, this is it, this is what I choose, that's it, rather than indecisiveness, which is fear. I'm going to stop there because I'm getting hungry. Because I'm choosing, I'm going to experience hunger now, and I'm going to have to go, oh no, I'm a victim, I'm going to have to go eat against my will. Hold me back. Anyway, waffling on for 2 hours and 15 minutes. God bless, hope this was helpful. Take your power back. You are a child of God, not a suffering blob. You are not weak but strong. You are not doubtful but all powerful. You're not fearful but all powerful. You're not doubtful but certain. You're not a victim but a chooser. You're not a sufferer but a deliberate manifester of whatever you want. You're not victimized but miraculous. You are not dead but alive by your will, and you are not imprisoned. You are free. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.